Part 1. The Girl by the Roadside. The road had always been silent at night. Stretching across miles of forest and rocky hills, the old highway was a ribbon of cracked asphalt lined with broken guardrails and faded warning signs. Truckers called it the Dead Road, even before the accidents began, because cell service cut out halfway through and the darkness seemed heavier than anywhere else. Few dared to drive it after midnight, except those with no choice, and that was when they saw her. The first sightings, it began with whispers among the long-haul drivers. She was just standing there, one man told his companions over lukewarm coffee at a roadside diner. His hand shook as he spoke, by the shoulder, in a white dress. Pale, real pale. I thought maybe she was hurt, needed a ride. But when I slowed down, she was gone, disappeared like smoke. Another driver interrupted, his face grim. No, she doesn't disappear. She gets in the back seat. You don't even see her open the door. She's just there. At first, people laughed off the stories, blaming exhaustion, lack of sleep, or too many beers after a shift. But then the deaths started piling up. A family sedan found upside down in a ditch, doors locked from the inside, all passengers dead. A delivery van wrapped around a tree, driver's eyes wide open, frozen in terror, as though he had seen something far worse than death itself. And always, on the night of the crash, someone swore they saw a girl, long hair covering her face, dress soaked in something darker than water, standing by the highway, holding her arm out as if asking for a ride. The legend grows. Rumors spread quickly. Some said she was a hitchhiker killed years ago by a drunk driver. Others claimed she was a runaway, murdered, and dumped on the road. A few even believed she was the spirit of the highway itself, angry at the endless flow of traffic that scarred the earth. But the details repeated themselves too perfectly to be dismissed. Always the same spot, always the same girl, always the same ending: blood, twisted metal, death. Locals began calling it the Blood Highway. Marcus's ride. Marcus, a young trucker, didn't believe in ghost stories. One stormy night, his dispatcher begged him to take a load across the state, cutting through the old highway. He hesitated. He'd heard the stories, but the bonus was too good to refuse. The rain lashed against his windshield, the wipers squealing as they struggled to keep up. Midnight came and went. The CB radio hissed with static. His headlights cut through sheets of rain, revealing nothing but endless blacktop, until he saw her. At first, just a pale shape at the edge of the light. Then clearer, a girl in a white dress, barefoot, standing in the downpour. She raised her arm slowly, thumb out. Marcus swore under his breath. It's just a trick of the light. Just my imagination. But as he drove past, his mirrors showed her face turning toward him. Her hair clung to her cheeks, but her eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the headlights. When he looked back to the road, his stomach dropped. She was sitting in his passenger seat. Her dress dripped water onto the floor. Her skin was gray, lips parted, whispering something he couldn't hear over the rain. Marcus screamed. The wheel jerked. His truck veered, skidded, slammed into the guardrail. The world flipped into a blur of sparks and steel. When rescuers found the wreckage at dawn, Marcus was dead. His face twisted in horror, his hands gripping the wheel so tightly his knuckles had snapped. The passenger seat was empty but damp with water, as though someone had just been there. Survivors? Not everyone who saw her died. A handful lived to tell their stories, though many wished they hadn't. A college student, drunk after a party, picked her up without hesitation. He remembered nothing after that, only waking up in the hospital with broken ribs and his car crushed into a tree. Nurses said he was lucky. He didn't feel lucky. In his nightmares, he swore he still saw her in the corner of his room, dripping wet, waiting. A retired soldier, hardened by war, claimed he stopped for her, only to watch her vanish into thin air before reaching his truck. I ain't scared of much, he told reporters, but I'll never drive that road again. Not for all the money in the world. One couple on a road trip said they saw her in their back seat through the rearview mirror. When the man turned around, the seat was empty. But when they pulled over to breathe and check, muddy footprints marked the upholstery. Footprints leading out, not in. The curse deepens. With each death, her legend grew darker. People began to notice that accidents occurred almost exactly at the same time, between midnight and 3 a.m. Drivers who dared to cross the highway during those hours often turned back before reaching the cursed stretch. Some who made it through said they heard knocking on their car doors, even though the road was empty. The ghost seemed to hunger for attention, for fear. The more people spoke her name, the stronger she became. And then came the night of the bus crash. The bus sock. It was a group of 20 teenagers returning from a concert. The driver was tired, yawning, but the kids were loud, singing, laughing, filming themselves. Nobody cared that the road was dark and deserted. Then the singing stopped. A girl stood by the roadside, thumb out. The bus slowed instinctively. Some of the teens shouted, "Pick her up!" Others laughed nervously, recognizing the legend. The driver hesitated, but as the headlights caught her face, her eyes burned red through the glass. The bus swerved violently, hitting the guardrail. It rolled 3 times, metal shrieking, windows shattering. Bodies flew like rag dolls. The survivors, bloody and broken, crawled onto the wet pavement, crying for help. One of them swore he saw the girl walk among the bodies, crouching beside the dead, touching their faces tenderly like a mother putting her children to sleep. When she looked at him, he pretended to be dead until sirens wailed in the distance. 18 out of 20 died. The fear. After that, the government tried to close the road. Concrete barriers went up. Signs warned drivers to take alternate routes. Yet somehow, accidents continued. People who ignored the warnings never came back. The legend was no longer just a story. It was real. Locals said the girl's spirit couldn't leave the place where she died. She was cursed to wander human, searching for rides she could never finish, dragging her victims into the same endless night. Truckers refused to drive the highway. Parents told their children never to mention her name after dark. Priests blessed the road, sprinkling holy water, but the puddles only rippled as though something unseen walked through them. Still, sometimes on nights when the moon was hidden and the road was soaked in rain, a lone driver would see her, standing there, drenched, waiting. And when they looked again, she was already inside. The last witness says, one night a man named Daniel, a local mechanic, drove home from a late shift. He was sober, alert, and skeptical. He'd fixed too many crash-damaged cars not to wonder. He promised himself he would not stop, no matter what. Halfway down the road, the air turned cold. His headlights flickered, and there she was. He gripped the wheel until his palms bled. Don't look. Don't stop. Don't. But curiosity betrayed him. He glanced at the mirror. She was in the back seat. Her face leaned close to his ear, whispering, breath cold as ice. He couldn't understand the words, but he felt them burn into his bones. His chest tightened, his vision blurred. And then, silence. Daniel's car was found parked neatly on the roadside, engine still running, headlights on. Daniel himself sat in the driver's seat, stone dead. His face was pale, his eyes wide open, staring at the mirror. On the inside of the glass, fog had formed, as if from breath. 3 words were written there, "Take me home." Ending of part 1. The highway became infamous across the state. People came only to leave flowers or crosses hammered into the dirt for the lost. No one lingered after dark. The girl by the roadside still waits. She always will, until someone takes her home. Part 2. The Chain of Accidents. The authorities had hoped the barriers would stop the deaths, but the highway had a hunger of its own. The concrete blocks, the warning signs, the detours, none of it mattered. Drivers who strayed too close to the cursed stretch still whispered of seeing her, the girl in white, drenched, waiting. And when she appeared, no one was safe, not even those who swore never to stop. A road that wouldn't sleep. It began again with the truckers. Convoys tried to band together, believing safety came in numbers. One man alone could be tricked by his mind, but 10, 20? Surely not. But the road did not care for numbers. One stormy night, a group of 6 trucks left the interstate, choosing the old highway as a shortcut. The drivers joked on their radios, laughing at the idea of a ghost pretending bravery. Some even dared each other. If you see her, stop and kiss her. They laughed, until the laughter died. "Hey, what the hell?" One voice crackled. "What's wrong, Mike?" Another answered. "She's there." Static hissed. Then came another voice, trembling. "I see her too." Headlights cut through the storm, and every driver saw the same thing. The girl standing in the center of the lane, barefoot, her hair whipping in the wind. The lead truck swerved violently, brakes screaming. The one behind slammed into it. Another jackknifed, sliding across the slick road. Engines roared, horns blared, and then the world erupted in fire and steel. A chain of explosions lit the forest like lightning. Flames consumed the wrecks, and the air filled with the screams of men being burned alive. And through it all, one survivor crawled from the wreckage, his body half charred, eyes wide in terror. He swore before his last breath that the girl had stood amid the flames, her dress burning but never consumed, her face twisted into a smile. The rumor becomes reality. News traveled fast. The highway was now more than haunted. It was deadly. Whole families avoided it. Trucking companies rerouted drivers miles out of their way, rather than risk losing men and vehicles. But curiosity is stronger than fear. Ghost hunters, thrill seekers, and desperate souls still ventured onto the road. Some live-streamed their attempts, boasting they'd filmed the girl and exposed the myth. None of their feeds ever ended naturally. The screens always cut to static, often with a final, chilling frame, headlights illuminating a pale figure standing far too close. Bodies piled up. A man was found slumped over his steering wheel, his car undamaged, but his face frozen in a scream. A teenage couple was discovered on the roadside, both strangled, yet no marks of rope or hands marred their skin. A motorcyclist collided with nothing but empty air, yet onlookers swore a figure had appeared in his path an instant before. Each death deepened the legend. Each soul seemed to feed her. The passenger's revenge witnesses claimed she had changed. Once she had been silent, dripping, waiting. Now she spoke. Survivors who had escaped by miracle described her whispers, cold as frost, searing into their minds. "Take me home. Don't leave me here. Ride with me." Some drivers said she begged. Others claimed she screamed, but all agreed, if you refused, the road itself turned against you. Brakes failed, tires burst, steering wheels locked. And in your final seconds before the crash, she would be there, smiling in the rearview mirror. The school bus. The worst came one rainy autumn night. A school bus full of marching band students was returning from a competition. Laughter filled the bus, trumpets and drums stacked in the back, the driver humming along to the radio. And then silence. A girl stood on the roadside, white dress plastered to her body by rain. Some of the students laughed, whispering about the legend. Others grew quiet. The driver muttered, "Not tonight," and pressed harder on the gas. But the bus slowed anyway. The accelerator was useless. The brakes locked. The wheel stiffened in the driver's hands. Panic spread among the students as the headlights flickered. And then she was in the aisle. She moved slowly, barefoot, dripping, her hair hiding her face. Students screamed, scrambled away, pressed themselves against the windows. Some swore she touched their shoulders with icy fingers as she passed. The driver, desperate, jerked the wheel. The bus slid, toppled, and rolled into a ravine. Metal shrieked, glass shattered, bodies tumbled and broke. When rescuers arrived hours later, they counted 31 dead. Only 2 had survived, huddled beneath broken seats. Both claimed they had watched the girl kneel beside each dying student, stroking their hair as if soothing them to sleep. And when the survivors lit her face, they saw no sorrow, only hunger, panic. The bus accident sealed the highway's reputation as cursed. News stations ran endless coverage. Parents forbade their children from even speaking about it. Trucking companies declared the road blacklisted. Even the police refused to patrol it after dark. But fear did nothing to stop the deaths. One rainy week saw 4 accidents in a row. A limousine carrying a wealthy family careened into a tree. The parents were decapitated. The child found giggling about the nice lady who rode with us. A priest traveling alone was discovered in his car. Rosary clutched so tightly the beads had cut into his palms. His eyes were gone. Sockets burned black. A biker gang rode through at midnight, mocking the legend. Their bodies were later found scattered across a 2-mile stretch of road, each face twisted in terror, as though they had all seen something that made them forget to breathe. The girl's legend was no longer just a ghost story. She was a plague, the road of fire. Then came the convoy. 10 trucks, traveling together, determined to defy the curse. They filled their cabs with religious icons, crosses, Bibles, charms from every culture they could find. They swore they would not stop, no matter what they saw. For a while it worked. They rolled down the road, headlights piercing the darkness, radios filled with nervous banter. Some even began to relax. Then the fog came. It swallowed the trucks, thick as smoke. Visibility dropped to nothing. One by one, their radios crackled into static, and then the crashes began. The first truck braked suddenly. The second plowed into it. The third swerved, jackknifed, blocked the road. One by one, the others slammed into the growing pile. Fire erupted, explosions chaining down the line like dominoes. From the nearby hills, witnesses later swore they saw the scene lit up like a war zone. Flames devouring steel, black smoke rising. And in the middle of it all, a girl in white walked calmly between the burning wrecks, untouched, her hair glowing red in the firelight. Not one trucker survived. The legend carves itself. By now, the highway was less a road than a graveyard. Twisted wrecks rusted in the ditches. Charred guardrails marked the sites of explosions. Crosses lined the roadside like crooked teeth, each one representing a lost life. Locals whispered that if you stood there long enough, you could hear voices in the wind, the screams of the dead, the sobbing of the girl, the echo of crashes repeating themselves forever. But no one lingered long enough to be sure. The road had become her domain. The hungry spirit experts argued about her. Paranormal investigators claimed she was a classic hitchhiker ghost, trapped between death and the afterlife. Priests believed she was a demon feeding on fear. Some whispered she was neither, something older, a spirit of the road itself, wearing the form of a dead girl. But all agreed on one thing: she was growing stronger. Where once she needed to be seen to kill, now she reached beyond. People who only dreamed of her woke screaming, hearts stopped in their sleep. Men who swore never to drive the road still died at home, car keys clenched in their fists, eyes wide with terror. Her hunger was no longer confined to the asphalt. The final straw. It was the governor's son who forced action. One reckless night, ignoring his security detail, he drove drunk down the road in a brand new sports car. Hours later, they found the wreck, shattered against the rocks, twisted beyond recognition. His body was nowhere to be seen. Only the passenger seat remained, soaked in fresh blood. That was when the government gave up on explanations. They didn't care about myths anymore. They cared about the girl, the accidents, the endless chain of deaths that no law could stop. So they called for someone else, someone who might understand, someone who could fight her, a man the papers would later call the Exorcist of the highway. Ending of Part 2. The road grew silent again, not because it was safe, but because everyone feared it too much to drive. Yet those who lived nearby swore they still saw her, standing in the rain, waiting as cars rusted around her. Her presence lingered in the air, in the earth, in the blood-soaked pavement itself. The chain of accidents had carved her into the land, and only something stronger than death could stop her. Part 3. The Exorcist. The road had claimed too many. No barriers could hold it back. No prayers could silence it. The girl had turned the highway into her hunting ground, feeding on souls like a starving predator. The government stopped pretending it was just bad luck. When the governor's son vanished, leaving only a blood-soaked passenger seat, officials realized the truth. This was no ordinary haunting. So they called for help. The man who walked with shadows. His name was Master Leon. He was no priest from a church, nor a monk from a temple. He was older, stranger, an exorcist who carried with him stories of banished spirits, broken curses, and binding rituals. His tools were not crosses, but bronze mirrors, bells, talismans, and jars carved with symbols no one else could read. Locals watched as he arrived, stepping onto the cursed highway at dusk. His robes were simple, but his eyes glimmered with the weight of 1,000 unseen battles. "This road is not just haunted," he said, voice calm but sharp. "It is infected. The girl is not alone. Every soul that has died here clings to her. She carries their pain, their rage, their hunger. She is no longer one ghost. She is many." Preparing the ritual. He chose the very heart of the cursed stretch, where most of the crashes occurred. Rusted wrecks surrounded the spot, crosses leaning in the weeds, the smell of oil still staining the soil. There, Liang set his tools, a wooden altar, a brazier for burning incense, a mirror polished so brightly it reflected the sky like water, and at its center a jar covered with crimson seals. As twilight deepened, he drew a circle around the altar with black ash. "No living soul may cross this," he warned the onlookers, police, journalists, and trembling locals who had gathered. If you step inside, the spirits will drag you down with them. The crowd stayed behind the line. Fear thickened the air. Then the wind shifted. The ghost appears. It began with whispers. At first faint, like children muttering in another room. Then louder, overlapping, dozens of voices at once. The air grew icy. The headlights of abandoned wrecks flickered on without engines. Radios crackled with static, though no one touched them. And then she came, the girl in white, barefoot, soaked, hair clinging to her face. She stood in the center of the road, eyes glowing faintly in the dusk, and behind her shadows formed, the shapes of others, truckers, children, families, all the souls she had taken. They swayed like puppets, their mouths open in silent screams. The crowd gasped. One policeman dropped his flashlight and crossed himself. Master Leong's face hardened. "She is not asking for a ride anymore," he said. "She is demanding it." The battle begins. He struck a bell. The sound rang sharp, cutting through the whispers. The girl hissed, her head snapping toward him. Her mouth opened unnaturally wide, releasing a wail that shook the air. Glass shattered in abandoned cars. Crosses toppled from the roadside. She rushed forward, her form flickering like smoke. But as she reached the ash circle, she stopped, slammed back as if by invisible hands. She screamed in frustration, clawing at the barrier. Leong lit the brazier. Flames roared high, fed by oil and herbs. He began to chant, voice steady, words older than memory. The ground trembled. The jar at the altar rattled. The spirits behind the girl howled, faces contorting with pain. She struck again, this time with more force. The asphalt cracked beneath her feet. Black mist poured from her mouth, curling into the air like snakes. The crowd screamed. Some fled. Only a few dared to stay, eyes wide with terror. The struggle. Long raised the mirror. The bronze surface caught her reflection, but what it showed was not the girl. It was all the deaths at once. Burning trucks, screaming children, twisted metal, blood pooling in headlights. Every soul she had consumed glared from the glass. The girl shrieked and shielded her face, her form flickering violently. "You are not the road," Lang thundered. "You are bound to it, but you do not own it." She lunged again, this time managing to push through the barrier. The ash circle hissed and broke. She was inside. The crowd wailed. A cameraman fainted. One officer pulled his gun, but the weapon melted in his hands, dripping like wax. The girl hurled herself at Lang. He slammed the mirror into her chest. The reflection burned her like fire. Smoke poured from her body, and dozens of voices screamed at once. But she fought harder. Her nails raked his arm, drawing blood. His robe tore, her face twisted, now no longer human, half skull, half rotting flesh, half burning flame. She was all the death she had ever caused. The binding Leong staggered but did not fall. He seized the jar and tore away one of its crimson seals. The flames in the brazier flared higher. The jar vibrated violently, pulling at the air, sucking in the mist. The girl screamed. The shadows behind her began to swirl, dragged toward the jar like smoke in a storm. The truckers, the children, the countless dead, all howled as they were ripped from her form. She fought, clutching them, trying to hold on. But the mirror blazed brighter, reflecting her true form, a lonely girl, broken body sprawled on asphalt, dying alone. For a moment her rage faltered. She wept, and in that moment Leong struck. He slammed the jar against the ground. The lid flew open. The pull became irresistible. The girl shrieked as her body split into fragments of smoke and flame. One by one, the souls were ripped from her and swallowed into the jar. She clawed the ground, leaving bloody handprints on the asphalt, but the force dragged her down. Her final cry shook the sky. "Take me home!" Then she was gone. The jar sealed itself with a thunderous crack. Silence. The road was quiet. The wind stopped. The voices vanished. The headlights dimmed. Master Leong stood trembling, blood dripping from his arm, robe scorched. But his eyes were steady. He lifted the jar carefully and placed new seals across its surface. "It is done," he said. The crowd erupted, some cheering, others collapsing in relief. The police bowed their heads. The journalists lowered their cameras, too shaken to speak. The curse was broken. The girl was gone. For now. Aftermath. The government had the road rebuilt. Wrecks were cleared. The pavement was smoothed. Flowers were planted along the shoulders, memorials for the countless dead. Accidents stopped. The highway became safe again. But those who had been there that night, the few who had seen the girl with their own eyes, never forgot. They whispered about the jar. Where had it been taken? Who guarded it? What would happen if the seals ever wore away? And sometimes, late at night, truckers swore they still heard faint knocking on their doors, even on roads far from the cursed stretch, as if someone was still trying to get in. Epilogue. Master Lang disappeared soon after, moving on to battles elsewhere. But the legend of the girl by the roadside never truly, because legends don't die, they wait. And if the jar ever breaks, if the seals ever fade, the girl will return. She will stand in the rain once more, thumb raised, eyes glowing, and the accidents will begin again, forever.